Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod. I'm well. Here we are on Sunday the 19th of January. So we're ploughing through January at a merry old pace. And the weather is Januaryish.
Januaryish, yeah, it's cold, overcast. Yeah, no ice here this morning, but certainly on the nippy side.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We seem to have got over our snowy snap, which was fun while it lasted. Thankfully, I didn't crash into a Range Rover at a junction when my car wouldn't stop. But we've come out the other side, I think. So, yeah, we're in January and it's flying by.
I didn't know that was a thing. You almost had an accident, did you?
Well, I was giving a friend of mine a lift to work as well. And in slow motion, we just slowly slid. And luckily, this person in the Range Rover had some very good reactions.
Wow. Was this in the Porsche?
No, this was in my i4, which obviously is 2 ton of electric heaviness just sliding along. Other than that, to be fair, I should have gone a bit slow at that junction in hindsight, but actually the rest of it in the icy weather, it's been fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad it's worked okay. I mean, we've got follow up on my car if you want to dive straight into follow up.
Yeah, let's do it. Follow up. Let's go.
So yeah, my car is going fine. I went to Cardiff and back in it yesterday. I'm going to keep a log of all the electricity I use in it over the weeks, months and years. I discovered it's actually got a driving log built into it, so we'll keep a recording of these things itself. So I'm going to keep an eye on that too. But more interestingly, and part of our news story, hopefully I'm sharing and the viewers will be able to see this week, not have some of the issues we had last week, is that what the infotainment system runs on, which is Android Automotive, has apparently been quite difficult to get apps into. Developers had to do a fair bit to actually get them in there. But Android or Google have made some changes where it's going to be much easier to port standard Android apps into Android Automotive, and that can only be a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
That's 100% got to be a good thing. So you're probably going to end up with loads of apps now, aren't you? So you can play games and watch TV shows.
I think the TV show things will be good because when you're charging it, it's quite nice. It was quite nice in the Tesla to be able to fire up Netflix and so watch an episode of Friends or something just while you were topping up. That kind of stuff's good. But also, it's mapping apps, for example. So, I mean, you get Waze, a better route planner, and obviously Google Maps is built in anyway. But Apple could port Apple Maps over. Maybe we could have Apple Music on Android Automotive. I think these would all be good things.
I think they're going to have to, aren't they? Because otherwise you're going to end up in the Apple TV situation where they launch stuff, it's only on Apple platforms. It then struggles for adoption, then they try and retrospectively do it. And I think they do need to get podcast, music and maps just out of CarPlay and into other cars. And adopt that platform agnostic strategy, like the Netflix strategy, I'm going to call it, because obviously for them it did wonders. I'm interested in this space because it looks like a lot of car manufacturers are doing a lot more with Android Auto or their own blend thereof. They're not supporting CarPlay as much. I can't remember if we spoke about BMW, but BMW's new version isn't going to be as good as the version of CarPlay that I've got, where you can have it on the cluster and in the heads-up display. But that only works for Apple Maps. Like Waze doesn't seem to have access to that goodness. But it does feel like Apple's not done much with CarPlay, considering a lot of people use CarPlay. And when I put up, why doesn't the TV app appear and allow me to stream a TV show off my phone and things? They've got all of this. I'm just surprised they're not doing much with it when others are already there.
I suspect the motoring industry is in the same place as the music industry and the TV industries are, that they've seen how Apple has taken this ball and kind of run away with it to a certain extent, and they don't want it to happen to them. So they obviously have more control with Android Automotive. We've seen the stalled launch of CarPlay 2. I mean, that was meant to have happened by the end of last year and didn't. So I suspect this is just manufacturers going, well, why would we?
Yeah, well, that was CarPlay Next Gen, where they could literally, get in bed with the manufacturer. Whereas I think we do need a CarPlay 2, which is just an updated UI and do a little bit more with the current iteration of the, what in essence mirrors from your phone. It just feels weird how they've not really done anything with it. But yeah, it's so widely used, probably more widely used than iPadOS at this point.
I'd agree, and let's face it, as we've seen with General Motors and other things, people won't buy cars unless they've got CarPlay built into them, or at least some sort of mirroring like that. You can see when you use Android Automotive, it's definitely better than the thing Tesla has in one sense. It's a properly integrated Google Map with the colors and all the rest of it. You can do incident warnings if there's somebody broken down at the side of the road. That's not built into the Tesla stuff. You can run a better route planner or other things. And the Rivian implementation of their own thing is the same as well. I think it's attractive for a manufacturer to have a well-supported thing that they can put their own skin on, that they can manage their own way, that comes with apps like this. So I think Google have played a blinder here.
It does feel like they were also ran for a little while, and then I agree with you. I think they've had a very good strategy and they're executing on it.
Yeah, someone that hasn't had a very good strategy is TikTok, and this is breaking news as we record the podcast this morning. TikTok was banned in America last night about 9 p.m. Eastern time. So the company ByteDance isn't allowed to operate in America. They've gone down with the notification saying a law banning TikTok has been enacted in the US. Unfortunately, this means you can't use TikTok for now. We are fortunate that President Trump has indicated he will work with us on a solution. A bit of political signaling there, a bit of a worry of that. But Trump is the person that started this ban in the first place. But if you're American, you can't have TikTok. It's also gone from the Android store and the App Store on Apple platforms, so you can't even download it anymore. I think VPN usage will go through the roof in America. I've got to say, that with their porn laws probably means VPN usage was already going through the roof. But it's still available in the EU, UK, China, other places, obviously.
Yeah, apparently 170 million users in the US. So never seen something like this, I don't think, at this scale. So super interesting. Yeah, a year from now, do we think TikTok's going to be back in America? I'm not sure.
It could be back on Monday if it's the first thing Trump does.
Well, there is that, I guess. Yeah, we've got all that to look forward to. I just haven't seen this. Interesting, though, Apple had to release an update to Test Flight, apparently, to block the Test Flight version of TikTok, which you'd have thought they'd have some server-side mechanism to do that. So I thought that was a bit odd.
It is a bit odd. This isn't the only thing affected by this ban on ByteDance. If you're a fan of Marvel Snap, which is a really popular sort of battler card game, that's also been banned because they own ByteDance through a bizarre series of ownership things. The studio might be Californian, but they're fundamentally owned by ByteDance. So Marvel Snap's gone as well.
Wow. Oh, it's bonkers, isn't it? So in America at the moment, then you can't get all the good EU games in stores, and you can't get all your Chinese games and apps. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, actually, that they're getting less software at the moment in that country, and they are, the platform owners.
Well, it's all that freedom they've got. It just keeps bleaching out. All the freedom to speak and all the freedom to produce apps and all the rest of it. It is worth, on YouTube, seeking out John Oliver's take on the whole TikTok thing and whether there is any more spyware in it. And the sort of summation of this is, it's okay to be a sort of slightly creepy surveillance social media platform as long as you're American. Facebook has no problem, X has no problem, others have no problem. But if you're Chinese, then there's a problem. They didn't find anything particularly worse about TikTok than there was in any of those other social media platforms. And you're right, this is the first time I remember anything like this just being switched off.
And it's not like Facebook have been famed for how they care about your privacy. Let's put it that way. It's super interesting. But it also, something that we've spoken about before is, modern games can go away, and if you have bought a game in the 90s on disc and still have it, you could still make it work. Whereas this just shows that, if it's a connected game, it can literally disappear overnight and there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's quite a thing. Something that people in America are doing something about is giving Trump large amounts of money to be at his inauguration, which is now going to be indoors. I don't know if you saw this news. There's going to be a big cold snap in America, so they can't have an outdoor inauguration.
Oh, right. Trump's
quite upset about it.
No, I didn't realise that. So where are they going to do that? Because they must need a huge venue, surely.
I think they do it inside the Capitol building, so it goes more on the TV and all the rest of it. It has happened before. I think it happened to Ronald Reagan in 1985 or something like that. It was so cold people would sit outside, but there you go. Anyway, as we've reported on this podcast or commented on this podcast, that lots of the big tech bros have given Trump money, and some of the big organizations, Uber, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Meta, I should say, have all given $1 million to Trump's inauguration. Anyway, that's now going to be investigated or looked at as to sort of the legality of that. Why have they suddenly started donating millions to this inauguration? Is this to sort of bend the knee before King Trump? Seems so. Maybe ByteDance should have done that.
Yeah, that'd have been an interesting one, surely, though, if ByteDance had made a... Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that would work, how a foreign state... have we in the UK made a donation towards his inauguration?
Well, I don't think we're flavour of the month with Elon and Donald at the moment, are we, based on the comments on X? But I agree with this. I think this should be looked at. This feels wrong that large oligarchies can give money to the incoming president to ensure his favour. Why isn't this illegal? You would hope this would be illegal. It seems wrong that you can pay the leader of a country who has the power that the president does to be able to do this kind of stuff, or to just get on his good side. I mean, it really is going back to the days of the king, bringing him, frankincense and myrrh or whatever it is he wants to do. I don't know how far the Democrats, and this is pushed by the Democrats, will get with this because it's a Republican House.
Yeah, it does feel wrong. The whole thing feels wrong, and it probably has been going on for years, but it feels like it's even more magnified and bigger than ever.
I'm going to make a joke there. It feels more magnified.
Very good.
Thank you very much. One thing we should report on is that iOS 18.3 is a thing, or at least the beta is a thing. In iOS 18.3, the Apple have said they're going to suspend the notification summaries from Apple Intelligence for things like BBC. You haven't really got a handle of your intelligence thing there, Apple, have you?
It's not feeling that intelligent, is it? I think, well, we've already commented, Apple Intelligence has been a bit of a damp squid. Squib. But this is, I mean, it feels like the BBC one's got a lot of traction, but there must be other news services, surely, that have been impacted by this, but the BBC one seems to be the biggest. And we've spoken on before about text messages and mail threads getting completely the wrong end of the stick with it, and it frankly making things up. So I'm not surprised by this, but what is disappointing is how slow Apple are reacting to it. 18.3, when's that going to come out?
Couple of weeks.
But it always seems to be a couple of weeks. It just seems to be, it's like when you talk to a builder. Yeah, a couple of weeks. And it's just a movable feast.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't just the BBC. It's also been Washington Post in America. I think some of the American news services as well have seen this. What a surprise. I mean, Jason Snell had an interesting comment that if you take an entire article and you feed it into a large language model, it'll probably do a decent job of summarizing the headline. But what's happened is somebody has already summarized the headline when they make the notification. So probably a copy editor somewhere in the BBC, before they do the push notification that the story has happened, has summarized what's in that article. So what you're getting is a summary of the summary, and that's probably where the large language model is going wrong. But that shouldn't be a surprise. We've had notifications in our apps for a very long time. Why would you enable this feature? This is a very bad look for Apple.
It's not a good look, and their very scant response is not a good look, or not even releasing a date of when this is going to be fixed. It's just typical Apple, isn't it? And I think sometimes their stony silence does hurt them.
Absolutely hurts them. Another place that they're probably getting hurt quite badly is their interoperability with the EU. So we already know that the various laws that are working their way through the European Commission at the moment, such as interoperability, what do they call it? The thing where they send the shadow cloak links, the malicious compliance with various bits and pieces, are all problematic anyway. Free Software Foundation Europe, which is a group of advocates, are urging the European Commission to double down on the Digital Rights Act, the DMA. This isn't a surprise. We know they're not complying with it well, so it's, of course people are going to speak up about it.
Yeah, I think Apple have got some turbulent time ahead. I think last year I thought with the European Union piece would have been more problematic than what it was. It wasn't great. Let's not backtrack on that, but they're definitely not out of the woods, and there's just going to be more and more legislation. It's got to be a concern for them, surely, that they're not proactively ahead of deadlines. Everything's last minute, they're getting fined. I don't know, I find it a really bizarre stance for a company that keeps telling us that they've got our interests at heart.
Yeah, I don't think any big company has our interests at heart. And what they're hoping for, I think, is Trump to come along and save them at this point. And that, I wonder, is part of all the funding we're seeing going towards from big tech companies and CEOs towards Trump's presidency, is that maybe they can exercise political action against this negativity from them. Around the rest of the world, I know the EU are kind of leading the fight against this, but we've seen this in Brazil, we've seen this in Asian countries as well, Korea, for example, where Apple is being held to the fire, and Google is being held to the fire, and Microsoft, etc., about their actions in those countries, or lack of actions in those countries. And there was a story this week reported in 9to5Mac here about the EU potentially pausing its actions against Apple before the new incoming president takes his position on Monday. They've denied that, but you can see why they would hope that this would, save the poor little struggling American company that's barely got any turnover from the nasty EU oligarchs.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot waiting on Trump. And it feels to me like this first time that it's really impacted the tech world. The new president, starting their job on Monday, there seems to be a lot more hanging off this one than there has been in the last 20 years. You know, obviously presidents have come and gone roughly every 4 years, and this one feels bigger for some reason. You know, there's more donations, there's more things hanging off it, you know, and the talk of Bitcoin and other things going through the roof because Trump's in and pro this. So whilst hugely controversial, definitely feels like there's a lot hanging on it, and it feels like everybody's expecting the economy to improve, and a lot of the rulings around the American tech giants are going to be in their favour. So it'll be interesting to see what it actually looks like.
Well, I mean, he has also threatened to invade Greenland and Panama, so we'll see how he organises this first.
Well, he's going to do it all at once. It will all be done by Friday.
Oh, all at once, and of course, all the immigrants. Apparently, I read a story this week that he's going to invade Chicago and sort of throw all 1,300 immigrants out of Chicago on day one as well. So he's got a busy Monday.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm not exactly looking forward to it, I must confess.
No. Back to tech,
Yes.
and you and I both have M4 Mac Minis. Apparently, there's been some reports of issues with the USB-C and Mac Minis. I haven't seen many of these myself. I just before we started the podcast got a warning that there wasn't enough power to all the devices on my USB-C bus.
Ooh.
So that was news. So I had to frantically go and find some cables and move one onto another bus. But other than that, mine has worked okay.
Yeah, no real-time feedback. I'm talking to you through the front of my Mac Mini. The microphone is plugged into the USB-C port, and out the back is my display over Thunderbolt. I must confess, no issues here whatsoever.
So I'm using two of the rear connections at the moment. The camera is going through one, and then the daisy chain to my monitor and all the USB-A connections are on that. And that's the one I had the problem with, which I kind of suspected, that you've got chain to a monitor, chain to a little USB-C, USB-A hub at that point. But it works most of the time, so I haven't seen any serious issues, but interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. And these things do happen sometimes with new hardware. Sometimes it just needs a firmware update. So I'm not that surprised, if I'm honest.
No, I think that's fair. And then last but not least for follow-up, and I thought this was quite interesting in light of what we've seen with social media over the last couple of days, is that Eugene Rochko, who is the person who wrote Mastodon and started Mastodon and its federated model to social media, has actually handed over his CEO-ship to a commission for them to be able to manage it rather than him. He doesn't feel it should lie in the hands of one person, which I think is quite right. And I presume, as part of this, is that the commitment to not sell to a large multinational organization and hand those users over with it will be part of that, as will the federation, as will the lack of an algorithm in your timeline. You follow the people you want to follow. It's not promoting any particular thing. So I think this is good. It shouldn't fall in the hands of one person. We've seen that go quite wrong in companies such as Meta and others, X being probably the best example of somebody coming along with a personality to meddle around with it. It wasn't perfect before, but it got worse. So I think this is laudable by Eugene to do this.
Yeah, it seems like the right thing. It also feels, and I don't know this for sure, but he seems to be very much a product person and wants to be coding and probably not running a business entity as much. So it feels like the right thing. So they're going to move the CEO part to the non-profit bit. He's going to become, I think, Chief Product Officer, which makes 100% sense. So hopefully it's good. And whilst I am not a big social media person, I do enjoy Mastodon. I do follow a few people on it, and I'm glad it's not going to get swallowed up by somebody and then we will have to have a mass exodus and go somewhere else.
I'm very happy with it. I think particularly in light of what we're seeing with things like TikTok happening in America, an entirely open, very difficult to take down platform makes sense, and that doesn't have an algorithm pushing it. I catch up on Mastodon. I always sort of scroll from the point it was at. Ivory does a good job of maintaining that for me. Whereas when I go to Blue Sky, I get a sprinkling of what the algorithm on Blue Sky thinks I want to read, which is fine, but it's not quite the same. And TikTok, were they federated, wouldn't be having the problem that they're having in America now. They can just shut down one server in America, whereas if you have federated servers, well, it's that instance you'd need to shut down, and the rest of it keeps ticking away. So,
yes, that's a fair point. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. The federation piece, I think, hasn't moved as quick as I had anticipated, I must confess.
Well, there was a story this week about how after Instagram changed its DEI policies, as we talked about last week, PixelFed, which is the federated version of Instagram, was the top photo sharing app in the App Store. So I think it is moving along.
Maybe it's just passed me by. Maybe I need to go look at PixelFed then.
Well, I don't share a lot of pictures on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram, but if you're of that bent, then it's there.
I like the idea of Instagram. I hate the fact that Meta own it.
Yeah, I think before it was a Meta product, it was a much better thing. I always liked the icon as well, that sort of old-fashioned camera.
It was so good. That was one of the best icons ever made.
Though they are probably seeing an opportunity in the vanishing of TikTok in America, where they're hoping they're going to get platform growth, I would expect.
Yeah, this is only going to fuel Meta's fire, surely.
Well, we'll see. Should we do some news?
Let's dive into the actual news rather than just follow up.
Well, there's a very blurry line sometimes. First story, European Union has ordered X to hand over its algorithm document, so it wants to know how that algorithm is working. Is Elon just boosting? I don't think there is an algorithm. I think it's Elon going, say, make that important right now. But yeah, I think it's reasonable they'd want to understand, particularly in light of elections and things like that. How is this algorithm promoting particular stories?
Yeah, I read it. I was reading this last night, and I thought it's interesting that A, I can't ever imagine Elon wanting to hand it over. B, probably concur with you. Elon's just sat there upvoting all the things he wants people to see to make him even richer and his products even better. But I just can't ever imagine them doing that, because they're going to go, well, this is our intellectual property or whatever it may be, and then it will come to light that there isn't really an algorithm.
Yeah, I think there is, but it's what he wants it to be. Promote Tommy Robinson or somebody like that today, or anything that makes Keir Starmer look bad. Surface that a little bit. There's got to be something in the background for what's popular, the fire hoses it used to be. But yeah, I think this is a fascinating story. I don't think the EU will get very far with it. Elon will probably just ignore them.
Yeah, because he'd be like, well, what are they going to do? And then he'd just move on.
What are they going to do? I got to say, I trace a lot of this back to Elon's. Do you remember when those the football team were stuck in the caves in Thailand, and Elon came along and he called a UK national a pedo guy because Elon's suggestion was he'd build a submarine and put it through the cave, and the guy was like, "You can't do that. You're not going to be able to get a submarine to turn." So Elon turned against him, and since he got away with that court case, he seems to feel he can say absolutely anything.
He's invincible.
He does seem, well, when you've got as much money as he does, I'm sure he kind of is invincible, frankly.
Yeah, I'm sure is he the richest person in the world, or somewhere up there that it does buy you a certain self-confidence?
It does, but not the only American agent that's decided he's not going to pay attention to the EU. Google has also decided it won't comply with the EU fact-checking law. So it's just said, this is, if you surface a story, you're meant to say what your sources are for that story, and Google's just said, nah, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, I saw this. Again, disappointed, I think. Apparently Google weren't huge on it anyway, but they're not even going to bother doing it. So it all just feels wrong, doesn't it? We just seem to be regressing. I felt like we'd made a lot of progress collectively, and now we are just slowly walking back from that.
I think we're sprinting back from it sometimes. And this also is in line with what we've seen from X and others and Meta. They're getting rid of fact-checking. They're getting rid of DEI. I agree with you. I think the world is not making progress at this point.
It's sad, isn't it?
It is sad. Another thing that is fascinating to me, and this is kind of as we were leading up to the TikTok ban, is that Americans were looking for other places to go to post their social media, and they came across a Chinese app called Red Note, in China called the Little Red Book. Students of history might understand that reference in Chairman Mao. But quite a lot of American users are beginning to use Red Note as TikTok's going away. It's full of Chinese people. Apparently the Chinese people and the American people have got on very well. They've all been very polite to each other and everything. That's quite unusual on the internet, anybody being polite to anyone. But I think it's fascinating that the American government, to stop its citizens using a Chinese-owned app, have pushed them into using a Chinese-owned app. It's just bizarre.
But how long will that happen until that one just gets blocked and then it just becomes a game of whack-a-mole? Do you not think?
I do think, but whack-a-mole is a thing. People have always moved around social networks. They'll go where. Let's face it, Americans like TikTok because there's a revenue stream for a lot of them. There's influencers on there. There's eyeballs. They can sell stuff. Anywhere they go, they can sell stuff. Is where they're going to want to be, and they will be damned your morals about what the company's doing with your data. Though, if Instagram is the place where it happens, I'm sure they'll all flush back there. There will be some principled people who don't want to go along because of whatever Meta does, but it's not going to stop everyone. If they're making money on it, they're going to do it.
I think that's fair, but I just wonder how far they're going to go with this Chinese ban. That's all.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of repercussions here. I mean, Trump has said, he keeps going back to Trump. We should call this the Trump Show this week. I don't think I want to put that as the name of the episode. But
What's going to be the name of next week's show? They once he's in.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's just the pair of us sitting with our heads in our hands, maybe. He's already said he's going to look at export tax, import tax for Chinese vehicles. They're looking at social media apps. You know, all the potential ways that China has influence around the world now. Trump can't stop all of them.
I reckon he thinks he can.
Well, he thinks he can, but we need to get off.
We
do.
We're
talking about tech. A slightly amusing story, and back to Elon, but only in a sort of oblique way, is this story of a Cybertruck that was stopped in the UK. It was found at a Morrison's petrol station. What was it doing in a petrol station? It's an electric vehicle. They're not allowed in the UK. They're not allowed in the EU either because they fail most of our safety laws. You only need to look at the front of the truck. If a pedestrian walks in front of that, they're toast. There is no way they're bouncing safely off the bonnet. This is a story in the BBC about how it was stopped and banned and seized. We think it was imported from Albania or something like that, where you can actually do a grey import of these things because you can't get them in the EU either because we've got decent safety laws in this country and the EU for pedestrians and things. So this amused me no end. You know it's a grey import and it's illegal to drive it on the streets. So you're driving without insurance at that point. Look at the size of what I think is an Audi A6 behind the Cybertruck in the picture in the BBC article. It looks like a toy car compared to the Cybertruck.
That Cybertruck, can you imagine how much money this person spent to A, buy it, B, import it, C, drive it around uninsured? It is gargantuan. It's just, there's not a lot of redeeming qualities or any on that car. And like you say, strange ironic, they've been pulled up at a petrol station when it doesn't need any fuel. So it's just far too big for our streets. We are not built for a car like that. That's, on these roads.
It's too big. I mean, they're gross. Having seen a couple in real life as well, they're absolutely vast, gross pieces of... And they're made out of a metal that, it beggars belief that somebody thinks they can get away with this kind of thing, really. But, yeah, I guess you reap what you sow if you're going to drive around one and well done to the police who nicked him.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think if I'd saw one, I didn't realise they were banned in this country. I hadn't really kept up with it, but... that was news to me when I was reading this article. But fair play to the police. They've pulled them over. They've served the law.
I think they've done a couple of them, actually.
Oh, okay. Wow.
This is the first one that this made the news, though. But, what can you say? Moving on and sticking with corporate billionaires, this time it's the turn of Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos finally managed to launch his New Glenn rocket. They've had a few unexpected outcomes with the New Glenn rocket, so this is his rival to SpaceX. If you're a tech bro, you've obviously got to have a rocket firm. That's just the way that it works. This went quite well in the sense that it successfully took off. It made orbit. It launched its vehicle. The rocket itself failed to land, though. So in the same way that SpaceX rockets a portion of them can return and land back on the pad which they took off from. This was scheduled to land on a barge, and it didn't.
It's a shame it didn't land. I do want to see this tech work. I think being a kid, space is always one of those interesting things, and it's gutting when they're getting so far, but yet so far, so close, but not quite. And obviously, it'd be good to see something that isn't just an Elon company do well. But it is amazing, isn't it? What tech billionaires need to have their, like you say, their rocket arm just to prove their worth.
Literally a penis extension. Let's face it.
Yeah, fair. I guess that's the showing that you've got absolutely loads of money because you can afford to have your own rocket pad and space program.
One thing I do like about this is that the re-entry vehicle was called So You're Telling Me There's a Chance, which I quite like. I think that's based on Ian Banks' books. I think Jeff Bezos is a fan of Ian Banks, who's a Scottish science fiction author's writing. Ian Banks always called his various ships and mines and things, and that something funny like that. And I'm pretty sure if I went off and looked in Wikipedia, I'd find something that So You're Telling Me There's a Chance is the name of one of the things.
Okay.
One concern I have about it, I think actually Bezos has bought the rights to some of Banks's books, so we might see them sort of made into Amazon shows at some point, which again I'm quite keen on. Unfortunately, Ian Banks died 5 or 6 years ago at this point, I think, and he was a terrific writer, one of the best world-building writers you could ever read. I have a concern about all this. All these rockets, all they seem to be doing is launching Starlink equivalent satellites so you can have mobile internet anywhere in the world. how can this be right that we've got all this space junk, thousands of satellites, tens of thousands of satellites covering the planet? We're going to end up looking like Wall-E.
100%. That film is going to come to fruition, I think, at some point. Yeah, I agree with you. It's taken off quite big here in the UK because you can now get SpaceX satellite connectivity, and you can just see it now. We are just going to litter the skies because nobody can see it. Therefore, it seems to be acceptable, but it doesn't feel quite right, does it?
No, it doesn't feel right at all. Anyway, there you go. Another rocket has made it into the sky, mostly successfully. One thing that's less successful is Parallels. Parallels are bringing back classic Windows OS. If you want to run an x86 emulation inside of Parallels on a Mac, it only takes 7 minutes for it to boot, should you decide to do this, because it's not easy emulation to go from x86 to ARM.
7 minutes.
Yeah, you could do this in UTM anyway. You could get it to do the emulation from x86 to ARM, but it's never a fast thing. Why would you do this?
I think it's good they're doing it, and they've got to start somewhere, right? So if 7 minutes is the worst, it's a starting place, isn't it? But this obviously needs to go a long way. I'm amazed they've released this as a thing you can play with, in the latest beta. You'd have thought this would be something internal, whilst they do a lot of work to make it actually usable. But this just reminds me of the old days when you could, I'm going to mangle the name, Microsoft shipped it with their version of Office on the Mac, didn't they? And you could run Windows, Virtual PC maybe it was called. And that was, you're on a PowerPC Mac, you're emulating x86 architecture, and that was very akin to this. But we all did it from time to time. Sometimes it was just to play with it, or because we didn't want to have a PC, but there was this thing we had to do on Windows. So I think it's good they're doing it. I think this is not ready to be released to anybody, and this is, hopefully they will keep chipping away, and as Apple's chips get quicker and quicker, they will make up some of the gains. So I think it's good, but it's probably years away.
I don't understand the point, though. You can get ARM for Windows now. Surely it would be much easier to just get those games converted for ARM for Windows, so it works on that rather than going through this rigmarole.
Yeah, I was thinking more from the app's perspective, but also the ARM version of Windows is not widely used, and I think there's a long road to go until the ARM version becomes actually feasible. That's my view.
I don't think it's bad. Those Snapdragon chips have gone down quite well, I think.
They're just not widely out there because of corporate apps running on them. Will your AutoCAD run on it and all your Office stuff? I think it will come, but I think there's just a bit of time to go. And I don't know what Microsoft's equivalent of Rosetta is like, where it does the emulation for you. I don't know how good that is. Not used one.
I think it's okay, but it's not obviously as good as what they miss is the same thing we've got on Macs, which is the graphics aren't good enough. The GPUs aren't as good as the CPUs. So with all the focus on LLMs and things at the moment, you need a lot of GPU power. So you need your big honking NVIDIA chip in there, and neither the Windows ARM chips nor Macs are good enough for that. They're okay. They'll run a game, okay, but they won't do any sort of power behind it. And if you've tried running LM Studio or something like that on your Mac, it's not as performant as what you'd expect to see if you put it through some big ATI or NVIDIA graphics card. But who knows, maybe it will come.
I think it will. It's one of those things, it's just, if you've got a long-term strategy, you just got to iterate at it over time. I do think it's worth them doing this because I think x86 is going to take a long time to go away, and if you want to run any legacy stuff, I think this does make sense.
Something that doesn't make a lot of sense to me is DJI, who makes drones, deciding to relax their rules about where you can fly the drone. So I got a drone recently. It's full of all sorts. I had to set a flying test, effectively, that I was an operator in good standing to have my drone, even though it was under a particular weight. I decided to take the test. But built into the DJI drone that I've got was you can't go anywhere near the airfield in Swansea. It's warning you. It won't even take off if you're in certain proximity, based on the GPS of where the drone knows where it is. So they've decided to switch this off, certainly in America, that you'll be able to fly over airfields if you want. Just as, and one flew into an aircraft while it was fighting the fires in California. Seems like a bizarre decision to make.
Yeah, I live next to a massive airfield, a military one. I can't understand why you would relax the rules on this. Like, that doesn't feel right, especially as this is becoming a lot more accessible as these devices get cheaper. Why would you relax any rules on it? I just find that bizarre.
Yeah, it is a bit weird. Anyway, that's it. I think we've hit the end of the news. Have we missed anything?
Oh, we've been quite speedy today. I don't think so. I mean, we've got a bit of news coming up into the main show, haven't we, to talk about, which was probably the most exciting tech news today. So people can hang on for that. We discuss that in the main show.
Media.
Let's do it. Have you watched Severance season 2?
Severance season 2 was launched on Friday. Apple did some interesting PR for it. So it's the first time I can remember they showed other people's computers on their website.
Yeah, I think it's quite cool though, isn't it? Because Severance have got a good following. It's got a very unique look, I guess, and aesthetic. I think this is great, isn't it?
I think it's great marketing. That and the second bit of marketing they did, which is they kind of had a pop-up in Grand Central Station in New York, where they sort of made this Perspex cube, and the actual actors from the show went in and did some macro data refining in Grand Central Station. I thought that was really cool.
I think it's cool. I wonder how many people actually knew what Severance is, because it's obviously not, it's one of the breakout shows of Apple TV Plus, but how wide has it got? How many people actually have seen it? So I wonder if people were just going, oh, what's this going on? And obviously there's quite a crowd there, but I wonder how many people was like, wow, this is Severance. I love Severance.
How many people walk through Grand Central Station every day?
Squillions.
If a small portion of those squillions think, oh, that looks interesting, Apple TV, Severance, I'll go and check it out when they get home, and they get 300,000 more people looking at it, something like that, 10,000 people more looking at it. It's money well spent. It's good marketing.
Don't get me wrong. I think this is fantastic. I'm glad they've done it, and I'd like to see more of this, but it is cool. And like you say, it's interesting the style of computers they're using. They're not Apple ones, and it's good that Apple TV output doesn't use Apple tech all the time. Obviously, in most of their TV shows, it is iPhones and things, but that is generally our world we live in these days.
Not so much in Slow Horses, though. Have you watched it?
I have not watched it. No, I haven't had time.
Have you watched first season?
I've actually watched season 1. I haven't watched season 2. I'm assuming we can just watch 1 or 2 episodes of it.
One,
okay. Which is my preference. I prefer it. I think if I'm watching a TV show, when it comes out, 1 at a time, because I think you don't just binge it and it doesn't all just blur into one. I think it is better if you're really into something, that slow, steady pipe.
Severance episode 1 season 2 is very good. It's straight back into where they were. I love the look of the show. I love the slightly unsettling feel about it. It definitely has a style all of its own. There is some fantastic camera work in this first episode of season 2. The acting in it is off the charts. What's not to like about it, frankly? They've just kept it going as far as I can see. And journalists that have watched more than 1 episode of it say it's just as good as the first season. So I'm really excited. I wish they dropped 3, though. I like it when they drop 3 of the next season, so you can just sort of
just to get you going.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think the word unsettling is actually a very good word to summarise the show, because it is just all a little bit unsettling. So I'm looking forward to it. I will watch at some point. I just haven't had an opportunity without children. So when that arises, I will sit down.
Fair enough. Something I managed to finish, it's not often you can say you've finished a TV show in its entirety, is The Great at last. There were 3 seasons of The Great. I finally got around to watching the last one last Friday. And I'm going to miss it. It's 10 episodes each. It's Nicholas Hoult and Elle Fanning and a fantastic cast of supporting characters about Catherine the Great's sort of rise to power in Russia. Not something I knew anything about. It's based on a stage show that was on London. What an absolute triumph of television. 3 seasons of it, 10 episodes each. I'm very sad that they're not bringing it back from a 4th season. It's a joint production between Hulu and I think Channel 4 must have had something to do with it in the UK. It was shown initially on Channel 4 here. I didn't know till the 2nd season that Elle Fanning was an American actress. I mean, I recognise the name, Dakota Fanning, but Elle Fanning's an American actress. It's her sister. Absolutely knocks it out of the park. Possibly the best British accent I've ever heard an American actor do. And you can see in the ratings here, 96% from critics, 85% from fans. Terrific show. Well worth a watch. It's lewd, crude, occasionally violent, but extremely funny. It's really well done.
That's good. I think what I've learned is I'm only going to fit so many TV shows in a year, and I've got to just pick the ones I really want to watch, sadly. But it does look good. I do like Nicholas Hoult. I think he's very good. I don't know much about Elle Fanning, but it looks interesting, and obviously it's got great reviews.
It's a terrific show. It's if you find a little bit of time and you want something laugh out loud funny. That teaches you a little bit of history. It's mostly based on the facts of what happened. Then it's worth a watch, I think.
Okay, it's interesting. You've watched something with Nicholas Hoult in it, and so have I, which probably is a good segue into Juror number 2 that I watched this week. So this is directed by Clint Eastwood. It's got Nicholas Hoult in, as I've just said. It's got really good scores. It's a typical Clint Eastwood drama. It's not fast. It's well directed. It's a typical drama. I don't think there's anything amazing in it, but quite an interesting story. And the premise is you've got somebody on a jury to convict somebody that's been convicted of murder of their partner, but actually one of the jurors is potentially the person that's caused the crime. But it's quite interesting. He's very conflicted morally on the whole thing. And I thought it was quite a good film. I very enjoyed it. I was frustrated with the end, though. For me, it wasn't conclusive enough, the ending, which I was a bit disappointed about. But great acting. I just thought a really good film, and actually I want to go back and watch it again because I think sometimes you get something different out of it the second time. But really enjoyed it, and like I say, the reviews obviously rated it very highly.
Where did you see this? Netflix?
No, I just bought it on Apple TV. One of us actually buys films on Apple TV. I don't just stream everything that comes out, so I do actually still have quite a big TV library that I've acquired.
That's because you've spent a lot of money, and when they decide to take it away from you, you'll be even sadder than me.
But when these streaming services take films off, I've still got the ones I like. I don't buy a huge amount of films, but I buy ones I generally know I'm going to enjoy it and watch repeatedly.
Fair enough. One thing I also managed to watch this week, last night in fact, is Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, this is the sequel to the film Beetlejuice, which is 30-something years old at this point, horrifyingly. Yeah, it was alright.
Did you go back and watch Beetlejuice?
I had watched it recently. I watched it over Christmas or something like that. So it was fairly fresh in my mind, the original Beetlejuice. I don't know that this was a necessary film. It had the ingredients that it could have been great, and some great. I mean, Michael Keaton is terrific as Beetlejuice. They got Winona Ryder back. They got Catherine O'Hara back as the mother. It was all right, Willem Dafoe's in it as a police officer for some reason. They sort of introduce a lot of plot elements and then don't really pay it off or wait till the last 30 seconds. 5 out of 10 meh, frankly.
I need to go back and actually watch the original one, I think, because it's so long since I've seen it. I remember bits of it, but I feel like I need to completely refresh my memory and then maybe check this out.
I think the original's well worth a watch. It's got a certain gothic charm to it that Tim Burton definitely has in a lot of his films, and I love a lot of Tim Burton's early films. The first Batman movie that he did was absolutely terrific, also with Michael Keaton. And Beetlejuice is a great film, and he's done other great things, Edward Scissorhands and things like that. So great actor, some of his great director, some of his animated stuff's good as well. But this was just a bit. I've seen this. It was Beetlejuice, so you don't need to do this.
Yeah, no, I can understand that, and I think that is the problem. And I said something similar about Wallace and Gromit when it came out at Christmas. Generally, really enjoyed it, but there were a couple of elements that they recycled, and I thought it would be good maybe if you, because it started off with them being in debt, and it's like, well, but you did that one in the wrong trousers, where they've got lots of bills to pay and they can't afford it. You're reusing something that you've already done. It'd be good if you did it in a different way, but that was a bit frustrating.
I didn't mind that so much. I think it sort of ties into that sort of. Wallace isn't great with this stuff, all he cares about is his invention.
And I just thought it'd be nice to do something different. And it sounds like the same with Beetlejuice. Sometimes you need to have the universe live on, but just tweak it a little bit, I think, is my view. But there you go.
Fair enough. Should we do some games?
Some games, quite a bit on games.
Well, we've got a little bit on games. I'm going to go quickly, and then I'm going to shut up and let you talk for half an hour, I think, is my thinking. So I've been playing, I talked about this last week, I've been playing a little bit of XCOM 2. This will come into my app of the week to a certain extent as well. For some reason, YouTube, the algorithm suggested I watch some XCOM stuff, and I did. I've got the bug hard again. Steam says I've spent 364 hours playing XCOM over the course of it. I think the game is 9 years old at this point, so that's okay. I don't feel so bad about that. It's not like I've spent the last year doing it. But it's an absolutely terrific game, and whether you want to play it for the strategy or the story, or you want to just try and break the rules in it, or you want to configure your soldiers all to look like Master Chief or something like that, or send them into battle just wearing their pants, you can do that. And there's a huge modding community as well out there that will make it look like Battlestar Galactica, or you can take your pick, Star Wars. You can actually bend the story to be something else and on all the cosmetics. It's just a terrific game, and never in your life will you be as frustrated as having a 90% chance of hitting something or a 99% chance of shooting something, and your idiot droop's missing. So I just recommend, if anybody hasn't played XCOM 2, it's very, very cheap now. You can play it easily on a Mac, PlayStation, Xbox. Go out and pick up XCOM 2 and have yourself a blast.
Must be an old game if it plays on a Mac.
There's a Mac dedicated version of it.
Okay, fantastic. It is a good game. I have played it. I don't think I have the brain power though for turn-based games. That's where I do struggle. I'm not forward thinking enough.
Fair enough, I suppose. I love it anyway. It's great. I mean, you play Civilization though, so
I do like Civilization actually, and we're gonna. Well, why don't we talk about Civilization now? So that's probably a good segue, isn't it? So there's a a Civilization 7 preview that has come out. I'm quite excited about this because I've probably missed the last couple of Civs with young kids and stuff. I just haven't had the gaming time, but I think this year there's a couple of games I'm looking forward to. One is Civ 7 and the other one is Commando's Origins. But Civ 7, which you're bringing up now, well, I mean, that's a great title, isn't it? The most complete package since Civ 4. I think it's looking really good. Every now and again I've fired up the more recent Civ 6 and I just haven't really got into it. So I'm quite looking to get a fresh one and go for it. So I'm looking forward to getting this. I haven't worked out quite what I'm going to buy it on. I think probably Steam, because it feels like that will have the most portability if I want to play it on my Mac or on my PC.
I think Steam is the right place to get this, just as a link to XCOM as well. It's the same publishers as XCOM 2. Firaxis make both XCOM and the Civilization series, so good developers. I read a story this week that it's going to work on the Steam Deck as well, so I think it makes absolute sense to pick it up on Steam rather than anything else. I'm super excited about this one. I've always loved the Civ games, going back all the way back to Civ 1. I feel Civ 6 was a bit of a misstep. There was some mechanics in there that didn't come through as well as they had in Civ 5. So if this 15 hours of play, the Ars Technica journalists said they had, it's back to sort of the Civ 4 days with some of those new mechanics from Civ 6 and Civ 5 working. I'm all over it. I
did play Civ 1 a little bit, but Civ 2 I really played to death with some friends, and I remember that now. I've got fond memories of playing that game, and so I'm looking forward to a game like this to get into. I haven't really got a game at the minute that I really want to sink some time into, so I'm hoping this is going to scratch that itch.
I think this will be worth... I mean, let's face it, a lot of the media we talk about here, you need to invest a bit of time in to get a return on, be it XCOM or be it Beetlejuice. You need to spend that time learning the mechanics of the game or investing in the film. And I think you've got to sort of commit to that sometimes. You can't just dip in and out of games anymore. You need to give it, right, I'm going to be sat here for 3 hours and I've got to learn how it works. And then you'll sort of reap the returns, because that's what you did when you were a teenager. It's just harder to prioritise it when you're an adult.
100% harder, especially with children and stuff. But actually, my kids quite like it when we all go in the gaming room and we all play some games, even though we're playing our own games, but we're still together chatting and showing what we're up to. So now I'm looking forward to this, and yeah, I think it's going to be good. So I haven't bought it yet. Have you pre-ordered it?
No, I won't pre-order it. I'll wait. I mean, although this nudges me closer to pre-ordering it, I must say, when people say it's actually good. I don't think you should ever buy a game. Like, you shouldn't. I didn't even buy Call of Duty Black Ops 6 without a review. I saw a review before I bought it. You should never just pre-order a game unless you think the developer's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But even then, I'm like, So I will wait for a formal review of it and then I'll pick it up.
But pre-ordering is a bit different these days, isn't it? I think, because it's not like they're going to run out of digital media. It's not like in the old days where you needed the physical disc and they could sell out. So I think this is looking really good. The screenshots look amazing. So might be good to put my new M4 Mac Pro through some paces.
I think you could give it a go. I will just give a very quick side shout out to FreeCiv, which is an open source version of Civilization that looks like Civ 2 did back in the day. It has multiplayer and all sorts of things as well. So if you're sort of hankering for a bit of open source Civilization and just want to have a fiddle around with something, then FreeCiv is a thing you can do.
Okay, cool.
Right. I think it's all over to you now. This is what you've been talking about for a long time on this podcast. Tell us about the Nintendo Switch 2, Chris.
So, Nintendo have finally acknowledged the Switch 2's existence. I think we'd already seen a little bit of this come out. Like, we'd seen the logo and that there was still going to be a dock. And this is probably the first time in a long time Nintendo have released a successor product that isn't wildly different than the one that preceded it. I think that's fair to say. So I think if you saw a Switch 2, and I'm going to describe it for our listeners, it looks just like the Switch 1, but with less colourful, I'm going to go with. And so it hasn't got the colourful Joy-Cons on the side. It is very black. It looks like it's got a bigger screen, and the Joy-Cons are bigger. Everything's a little bit bigger. So it's looking quite an interesting device. I do worry a little bit about the size, just well I've mentioned it, in that obviously the Switch appeals to very young children. So I wonder whether they'll be able to hold it okay, because you see a lot of children with a Switch. So it's going to be interesting what that's like. So they've announced it in a video, and the video basically just animatedly showed you the Switch 2 and some comparisons to the Switch 1. So it's very similar. Like I said, it's got the Joy-Cons. They now magnetically go in the side. They're not on the rails that slide in. The screen's bigger. There's a little bit of colour on the Joy-Cons, but not a lot, just underneath the analog sticks. Hopefully they fix the drift issues that they've had before. But conceptually, it looks very similar. It's got USB-C on it. It's got a kickstand. It takes the same memory cards as the Switch 1. It looks a great device. I'm quite excited by it. They did show us, and you've got it on the screen now, some form of Mario Kart. Is this going to be Mario Kart 9? Because obviously Mario Kart 8 has had a good 10-year run, which is impressive. And it's still, we played it just the other day. It's still as great now as what it was when it came out. So it looks good, but they haven't really told us anything. They haven't told us what any of the internals do. They haven't told us if when you dock it, you're going to get 4K output. Because there was talk of that coming to the Switch 1 or OLED Switch, but it never happened, obviously. So they haven't gone into any of those sorts of details yet. And then the next update is going to be in April. And when they first announced this, because they show you the date at the end of the video, I thought it was going to be the 4th of February, but it's not. It's the 2nd of April, because obviously months and days, nobody broadcasts them in the same way. So I think it's looking really good. I'm really curious to see where they go. And it's going to be able to play all Switch 1 stuff, which I think is really good, because to be fair to Nintendo, I think they've invested heavily. They've also, been encouraging people to buy Switches for Christmas. And so any of the games you've already bought will run on it. And I think that's fantastic. It's good to have that backwards compatibility. And a lot of consoles are doing that. We've seen it with the PS4 and 5. I don't know what the Xbox world's like, but I imagine probably similar. But it looks a great device, but it's probably a little bit anticlimactic for me, because it's not wildly different. It's very black. I was hoping for a bit more colour. I really enjoyed that with the first Switch, that it was a colourful, fun-looking device and it looked different. Whereas I think if you saw this next to a Steam Deck, to the untrained eye, most people they just look the same black consoles that you hold in your hand. So I'm really curious to see how it goes, but it does look good, and I'm hoping Nintendo have got some good first-party games to go with it. Hopefully we're going to see Metroid at last, like I say, a new version of Mario Kart. There's obviously going to be some Mario games. We haven't had a follow-up to Mario Odyssey yet, have we? So it'd be really good to see what's going to come. And I loved Mario Odyssey, so I'm hoping they're going to do something like that. But this 100% will be on my list of things to get, I think.
I think that's a very good summary you've just done there. Yeah, I think putting it in a Steam Deck next to each other, not an awful lot of difference between the two devices at this point. Younger kids, I think, will struggle with a bigger device to hold it like that.
I'm worried about that.
The colour, I'm less worried about, because in 6 minutes you'll get a special edition version that's a different colour, and then 5 minutes after that there'll be, and Nintendo will try and upsell you on various colour ones, because they've done that before.
They do, but I like that Nintendo, when they normally release some hardware, it's a bit quirky. Do you remember when the Wii came out? This white console, white. Who does anything in white back in the early 2000s? So I don't know. I think I was just hoping for a bit of Nintendo quirkiness, which quite appeals to me. The GameCube, purple console, fantastic.
No, I think you're right. And this is an iteration. I don't think this is revolutionary. The only thing that's very vaguely interesting about it is it seems the Joy-Cons can be used as a mouse for some reason, that they snap into another dock part of it, and then you can use them as a mouse. So I don't know what that's for. Is that so they can play first-person shooters?
I think what you're seeing there in the screenshot that's in the video is that you can do that now. You can slide like a rail onto it that's got a tie to go around your hand. So when you use it as a controller, I think that's all that is, and it just makes the buttons on the top a bit more accessible. So I don't think that's wildly different to what we have now. I have heard talk about there being a potential mouse on there. I agree with you. This is very iterative. But what have they been doing for 10 years? That's what I'm mildly curious on. I'm really curious to know the specs. What first-party games are we going to get? What are the specs? And I'm not too bothered about how much memory it's got and how fast the processor is. But it's just, is this going to have some really good graphics on it? Something that doesn't look a little blocky, because that was the thing when the Switch came out. It was dated 10 years ago. It didn't have an amazing graphics engine, but it had the games. And I don't expect this to be obviously as cutting edge as a PS5. It's far too small for that. But you want it to be a good step forward to set us up for the next 5 years. Is this thing going to take over the world like the Switch did and sell the quantities? Possibly not. Nintendo generally have a very TikTok way of doing consoles. They have an amazing hit, and then the next one's less so, and then an amazing hit, and that's what we've seen the last few iterations. So I'd be curious to see how this lands. But on the face of it, I guess they've taken their winning formula and they haven't deviated too far from it.
Yeah, I think that's fairish. The Wii U was certainly not a winner. It was a flop, if anything. Whereas the Wii was massive. The GameCube wasn't great, but the SNES before it was fantastic. But then the SNES was very, very good. They hit it out the park twice, and as did Sega, as did everyone.
I think you meant to say the N64, because that came before the Cube.
Yeah, N64, yeah, which was a hit, but then the GameCube wasn't. Derailed my thought. Where was I going with that? No, you're quite right. You're quite right to correct me. There's going to be a more crowded market for them here. We've heard tell that Sony are going to release a mobile PlayStation 5. We heard that Microsoft are going to do something with the Xbox. The next version of the Steam Deck will probably be along by then. So what Nintendo have got are their games. The games have got to be good. They've got amazing IPs with Mario and Pikmin and others that they can. Star Fox, Metroid, Zelda, that you've as you've pointed out, they're what sell the consoles. So if they can launch with a new version of Mario Kart with new tracks that's significantly better, different, new things than what's come before, then Nintendo fans will roll over and buy it, and so will I. I've got a Switch. I don't use it very much, but there's the occasional game comes along that you won't get anywhere else that you can only experience in that. So for me, it's got to be 4K. The screen's got to be OLED. It's got to be robust. And it's got to have that sort of Nintendo magic around the games and software, because if it doesn't have those things, then you will just go and you'll buy your portable PlayStation 5 or something instead, and you'll get one and you'll do it there. Well, you won't actually, because nobody ever buys Sony mobile handhelds, but you know what I mean. That I think it will be a more crowded market for them. They have got an advantage in the fact that they've got all this IP, but whether this console has the power in it that's going to be able to do justice to some of those ideas is definitely a thing. And that balance of super hot, shiny graphics card, the power it sucks up, how much battery you've got, what can go in there, it's a really difficult thing for them to walk. And Nintendo are traditionally conservative about that stuff.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. You are 100% right, though. The marketplace is so much crowded because Nintendo made this marketplace last time out, didn't they? They defined the console that you can dock and just take all your games with you. Curious to know as well, they're going to do a version of this like they did the Switch Lite, where you've got, you can't slide the controllers off, it's not dockable, it's just 100% a handheld device. So it'll be interesting to see where they do that. I've never seen that many of them though, but it did hit obviously a much cheaper price point for people. I don't use mine docked, I must confess. It's more, to me, it's a handheld device. I forget it's got a touchscreen. But yeah, they are going to be competing with a lot more devices. And we talked about the Steam Deck, but there's also third parties that make Steam Deck-like devices now that are basically just handheld PCs. So it's definitely going to be a more crowded market. I think they are conservative, like you say, with processors and graphics. But the device generally had good reliability. It was just underpowered, and it's good for programmers in a way to actually optimize for that, I guess, and optimize for playability rather than look and feel.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Call of Duty is the size it is because of all the textures. Let's face it, it's all the textures and voices and things like that they bang into it. There was a talk of Nintendo getting Call of Duty for the next generation, that Microsoft committed to that. So if that's the case, then it's got to be powerful enough to do that. But that's a 300 gig install. How many people have got memory cards for the Switches that are going to be that sort of?
Or is that going to be one of those cloud streamed games? Because Nintendo have had a few of those on the Switch that just cloud streamed.
Yeah, there's quite a dependency though, isn't it? And I don't think Microsoft will be willing to change the code base that much. Saying that, we're all moving towards a cloudier future, aren't we? Nvidia and others have tried to do cloud-based streaming for a long time, and an Xbox Live will let you do the same sort of thing as well. And we talked about Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 that's meant to do the same sort of thing with streaming in the resources. Doesn't have smash your internet connection though. Yeah,
that is true. And I guess fiber's becoming more prevalent, but not everybody has got that.
Well, maybe it's a deal with Elon to get Starlink gaming.
Yeah, Starlink, Microsoft and Starlink hook up. You can see it now. I'm super looking forward to it, but sadly we've got about 3 months to wait for a bit more detail. But it's a good start. They haven't messed the formula up, and now the devil's going to be in the games and the detail, I think. But this is going to be a Christmas hit, isn't it? You can see it now.
Oh, totally. And I wasn't a Nintendo fan as a Commodore 64 guy back in the day, and then an Amiga guy. I didn't understand the console thing at all until I went around to a friend's house and played Super Street Fighter on a SNES. And then I got it. I got the speed and the color and the immediacy of just turning on your console and having the game there, not load times, not having to mess about with auto exec bats, and had you done this, that, and the other thing to get them up and running. So I kind of get the console thing. I have all three of this console generation. I don't have a PS5 Pro. I had a Wii on day of release. I'd forgotten I'd ordered it, and this thing arrived, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd ordered this from Argos, and it came on the day of release. So I think I'll be there as well. If there's a Mario Kart game at launch, I'm up for it.
I can still remember now my Wii turning up and unboxing it, and just my mind blown. What I can stand here and move my arms around, and the guy on the screen, his arms move too, and it was proper mind blowing. The tech that they had done. But to be fair, the Switch has got loads of tech in it. Like you can use the motion in the Joy-Cons and stuff. But I don't know how often people actually do that with those kinds of games. A lot of it is all docked. But I think they've got a winning formula. I wish it was a bit more colourful. I'm super excited to see where it goes, and I'm looking forward to it. So probably the one game purchase this year. It's going to be a good year for games actually for me. I think Civ, Commandos, and a Wii and a Steam Deck 2. That will do me, I think.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable, but I wouldn't get too hung up on the colours. Who knows? Maybe there's a white version of this and a yellow version. They just haven't shown it yet.
True. I do quite like the OLED Switch with the white controllers. I've got one of those. It's quite nice. Was
that the only update to the Switch over its lifetime? They made a cheaper version with the Joy-Cons permanently?
Yes, that's the Switch Lite. I think that is a good device for some people, but I barely see them. Then obviously lots of different coloured Joy-Cons, but the only upgrade was ever the OLED, and I don't think the OLED brought anything else. I think was it marginally quick? I don't think so, but it was basically the same internals.
Steam Deck's the same, man.
Yeah, true.
It's got an OLED.
Nintendo have written the book in handheld gaming, haven't they?
Yeah, pretty much. If you think back to the Game & Watch days, I'm going to have to scrabble around for a link now. I remember as a very young child being given a great Game & Watch, which in my head was Nintendo's very first thing. Did you ever have one of those? Oh, there you go, right in front of me.
Sorry, for viewers, I went to go and get one off the shelf. It's not charged up, but this is a USB-C Game & Watch that I bought a little while ago just for a bit of retro fun. And it's got Mario on it. It's fantastic. Super Mario Brothers on this one.
Wow. Yeah, mine didn't have that. Mine was significantly older than that. I remember being bought one, but it had a mirror, and God, I must have been 7 or 8, and my parents coming back with a mirrored thing. You sort of split it open like this. The screen was broadcast in on the mirror, and you looked at the mirror. It didn't have any colour on it. It was just like you had to catch bananas falling out of a tree or something like that. It was my first experience of Donkey Kong. Yeah, they were definitely a thing in sort of the early 80s.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And to be fair to the person who made the Switch have USB-C, they obviously nailed that, because here we are 10 years later and they can still sell it in the EU. So whoever made that call 100% got that right. And here we are, some Game & Watches on the screen. Yeah,
mine Switch, I think, has a USB-C in the bottom of it. Am I right in thinking that? That's how it connects to the dock. I do remember taking it away. We're going on a work trip, and I thought we'd have a bit of downtime. And I thought my Mac dock would work with it. I thought I'd just be able to plug a Mac extension at the bottom of it, and it would get HDMI and stuff. But no, it was proprietary.
Yeah, that bit's always been a bit annoying, that you couldn't just easily dock it, with a little like dongle to get HDMI on it. The fact you could just charge it anywhere, though, to me was always a massive bonus, because I could just chuck that in the bag, because I'm taking a USB-C charge for my laptop or my iPad. I'll just take the Switch with me if I do get a bit of downtime, like you say.
Yeah, fair play, Nintendo. You've got us all excited again.
Yes.
Should we do a very short main show? So, you were a fan of Sonos, the company that makes audio equipment. I am a fan of Sonos. Fan, inverted commas. I have quite a few of them around the house. I have a soundbar under my TV. I use them as remote rear speakers. I have also the Move, which is a sort of Bluetooth one that you can have around the house and also works with the Sonos platform. The point of Sonos was they were wireless audio systems that you could install in your house, have them outside. Some of them were waterproof, but it would just work seamlessly through an app where you could pair them up. You could have it playing in the whole house. Everybody would be playing different music around the house if you wanted, but it was a very app-first thing. Even the days before apps, they had their own controller you could use to do it. If you had existing hi-fi equipment, you could get an additional thing to put it in. But the point was, in the early days, streaming music that you had yourself, so music you'd bought as MP3s or whatever, and you could stream that around your house. And as we moved to the streaming world, then it integrated with Google Play, YouTube Music, Spotify, others that would give you that ability to stream music anywhere around your house. Quite annoying with Spotify, but I'll come back to that. They had a very, very bad move to a new version of their app last year, maybe the year before last.
It's been going on a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, where they completely redesigned the app, and you couldn't do things like pair speakers or stream music around your house that randomly drop off the network. There were all sorts of issues introduced by that. Fairly fundamental things for a company that's been making connected wireless speakers for 20 plus years at this point. So they got a lot of flack about this redesigned app. You and I covered it on the podcast that they tried to go back to the old app, but they couldn't go back to the old app. There were performance issues with it. You couldn't add new speakers. The functionality around some streaming services weren't there. I think it's fair to say it was a complete disaster.
Yeah, and look, software transitions are hard, aren't they? You know, it's hard to go from A to B, and sometimes you need to go there because of tech debt, legacy, the software tools used, etc. But yeah, Sonos sadly didn't do a good job of it, and their system was known for being pretty bulletproof, very reliable. I always remember going to a friend's house many years ago, and they had this Sonos equipment plugged into their nice posh speakers. They used to have, before mobile apps took off, they had dedicated hardware that did all of this, and you had a gadget where you could choose it all. It was fantastic, such well designed equipment. It's always looked good, but the app in the more recent years obviously is just 100% let them down, because they got it so badly wrong. They needed to take a lot longer with it. They probably need to do more of an open beta and just slowly move people to it. Whereas, they got it very badly wrong, and obviously this is the consequences of that strategy.
Yeah. So a minimum viable product is what you want. If your product is about streaming music around your house, it needs to be able to reliably stream music around your house, and it didn't. They received a lot of criticism at the time for having rebuilt the app for having built the app in Flutter, the new version of the app, which is a cross-platform thing that allows you to build for Android and iOS at the same time. But the previous app had also been built in Flutter, so Flutter wasn't to blame for this. This was just bad design. Anyway, all of this is to say is that their chief executive officer has decided to step down. Whether he stepped down or he was pushed, almost certainly he was pushed. And very quickly afterwards, their product designer is also stepping down. And taking over from them is an ex-chief executive from Apple.
It can't be the ex-chief executive of Apple.
No, the new chief executive is an ex-executive of Apple who had something to do with iPod design, I think.
Oh, it's going to be interesting, isn't it, to see what they're going to bring to it. But I guess, though, it's very different going from a senior position at Apple to being the chief exec of a company where it's not just about the product or your one area, you're running an entire company.
He's done other stuff, to be fair to him. So he's outgoing chief executive officer of Zero Longevity, whichever that is. I don't know what that is. Some sort of digital health platform. He was the chief product officer of Kubi, which was a weird little short streaming service. If you recall that, it was to stream to your phone. Didn't last very long. Vice president of Snap Incorporated. Wow. Snap's done all right, to be fair. Vice president of Pandora, a music streaming app, so he's got priors. And the bit of interest to us, at the start of his career, Tom worked at Apple building the foundational user interface of the Macintosh. He holds a BSc in computer engineering from the University of Michigan. So, to be fair to him, he's been around.
Quite a career.
He's had quite a career, from Apple at the start to some quite big companies in the meantime.
Yeah, fair play. I mean, in some ways, it's good they're going in Sonos are going in a different direction. They bring somebody external in. Sometimes companies need that, I think, and they need to go in a different way. Hopefully put user interface first, usability, and then that will win back their customer base.
Well, they've got a solid product, and for years everybody was saying, why doesn't Apple just buy Sonos and integrate it into their ecosystem? Because they already had that going on. And Sonos over the years has definitely had that reputation for the best audio products, but has occasionally got into legal troubles with other people sort of claiming to stream music. I think Google and Sonos had an ongoing battle at one point about Google's in-home streaming services that I think Sonos won, but I'm not sure Sonos won.
Yeah, I always thought Apple would buy Sonos and Eero because both Sonos and Eero seem to be pitching themselves as Apple-like products in their packaging, their presentation, their design. Sadly, never happened. Interesting is Tom Conrad has actually been a board director since 2017 at Sonos, so obviously been there a long time. Hopefully knows a lot about the company. This has got to be good. I'd like to see Sonos do well. I want them to do well to hopefully push Apple forward with their products and others. I've debated getting back into the Sonos ecosystem, but I haven't got there yet.
I will say the current iteration of the app is a lot better than the first one. I can do most of the basics now. I'm able to stream music around the house again. It's fairly reliable. I do get the odd dropout here and there for no adequately explored reason, but they did commit to improving the app, and now they're stuck on that. They've got to really get back to basics and make it work. And don't be distracted by headphones and things like that. Make your core users happy. The reason you and I have stayed Apple users for so long is that we like the core product. For all the political nonsense and the frankly bizarre ways the company goes sometimes, the fundamental product of a Mac or an iPad or an iPhone is a good product that's reliable. It switches on in the morning and notifications work. We're happy with it. And that was me as a Sonos user, certainly when I stepped back from the Apple ecosystem, because the Apple audio ecosystem was dreadful. I know you get on all right with it, but Siri just drives me mental. And it was good, and then it was bad again, and that was quite saddening. So I have hopes that new leadership can come in and get the company back to the fundamental, and then by all means push out into whatever other areas of audio or whatever you want to do, but make the minimum viable product the right thing.
Yeah, this is going to be positive, and they just need to get back to basics, don't they?
They do, and just for listeners' pleasure, there's a little article from 9 to 5 Mac that apparently Tony Fadell, father of the iPod, wanted Apple to buy Sonos, but Steve wanted to sue Sonos because, of course, he did. Steve was quite litigious.
Yeah, it would have been an interesting fit to see what they've done with it. If Apple did buy it, and same like with Eero, how would that have gone? Sometimes you look at it and think that'd be amazing. Why wouldn't they do it? But then sometimes some acquisitions don't always go as planned, do they?
Yeah, if we look at the Shortcuts app, it's hardly taken off. If we look at Siri, Siri was shown on stage as a product that they bought in, and it certainly didn't get any better, did it?
No, I think if you'd have said 15 years from now Siri would be like it was 15 years ago, we'd be like, no, sure it's going to get way better. Hasn't happened yet.
It's possibly dumber than it ever used to be.
Quite.
So Tony Fadell thought Sonos did great stuff with streaming, but Steve didn't like them because he thought the controller, which you talked about in the intro, looked quite like an iPod, the interface to it for scrolling around, and it kind of did.
It kind of did. It had way more buttons on it, but it was kind of cool though. This was before smartphones were a thing like they are now, and that controller was awesome.
Yeah, it was a great thing. And they very quickly saw jumping to apps would be the way to go. They could save themselves money. They used to have their own proprietary mesh networking system for sort of streaming the music around the house, which was very reliable, to be fair. They moved to Wi-Fi because they saw it was good enough. Quite a forward-looking company in many ways. And they managed to stand the test of time compared to some, other members of the ecosystem for things like this.
Yeah, you are right. They've made some good technical decisions over the years, I think, on the whole. It's just this this year-long app catastrophe that's really stung them, I think. So, no, I'm excited to see them come back. I want to see them bounce back.
Yep, I think that's fair. App of the week?
Do it.
So my app of the week this week is Crossover by Codeweavers. I talked about this before. I said people should go and buy it when they're on sale. I've actually had a bit of time because of my XCOM addiction to go back and check it out this week. It's very reliable, I gotta say. I installed Steam in it. I installed the Windows version of XCOM because the mod support is better than the Mac one. And actually, even under Rosetta, under Codeweavers, it's more performant than the Mac version, which I think is not a great look for whoever ported over the Firaxis code to the Mac. So I've been running it on that. It's been bulletproof. It looks good. Decent frames per second. I'm getting about 60 frames per second. I wouldn't expect more. My monitor only does 60 frames per second at the moment, but more than good enough. It syncs with everything, and I've installed a couple of other things in there as well, and it works great. And I think it only cost me £8 or something like that. So well done, Crossover. Great product. Amazing to be able to run some of this Windows stuff so seamlessly. Literally just a click and play experience other than logging into Steam. So yeah, that's my recommendation this week. If you want to run the odd Windows game with minimal hassle, easier than in Whiskey, which I've recommended before, check out Codeweavers Crossover.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. I like I say, I'm waiting for those couple of games to land for me, but Crossovers has always been a good app though.
Yep, it has. Thing of the
so
week.
I've gone for something a bit retro. I've gone for Scare Electrics this week. I was building some Scare Electrics yesterday with my son. We've got quite a bit of track and cars, And I just thought, it's quite nice to play something a bit analog, I guess. Hasn't really changed much probably since we were kids. They do a digital one now, which had a scary price tag on it, but we're just reusing some track we've had for a while. But yeah, just thought I'd put that on there as a little bit of fun. Make a track, clean the track, race some cars around it. A bit of good fun. Put some barriers up, have some skids. So that's what I've been doing this week.
Fair enough. I haven't played Scalextrics in a year. I bought my children Scalextrics for Christmas when they were 2. Clearly for the children that were able to use it. I bought the MotoGP edition for them because, of course, they like motorbikes. I played a bit of that. I think it's still in the loft somewhere, but that experience of things flying off the track and finding it from under your sofa or whatever is definitely one that I'll carry with me for a long time. It looks like it's as expensive as it ever was, though.
Yeah, not a cheap product, given that it's largely a bit of plastic, very small motor, some brushes. The cars can be quite expensive. All of it's quite expensive, but I guess it's quite a niche product, isn't it? It's not that prevalent, is it? A lot of kids are just playing games online. They don't actually play with toys anymore.
Yeah, it is nice to have something a bit analog, though. There we go. Good recommendation.
There you go. If anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at G5Maniac at Mastodon.scot, and he's on Blue Sky, and he's at G5Maniac at bsky.social. I am on Mastodon as well, and you can get me at _CJP at Mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to our website and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.